And plus, a lot of people don't realize how different shower glass is more so than storefront. Shower glass, like you got to have it for the 1/8 of an inch, right? Storefronts, if it's not perfectly square, you could just caulk it in and you're good to go.
Yeah.
And so it's a different ball game and different kind of customer base, and it's very interesting.
Welcome to the Roll Up and Roll Out podcast. Sit down with blue-collar business owners and inspired entrepreneurs to get the industry insights from the leaders that grow our local communities and learn how to scale your business. Regardless of GED, these people know how to GSD. Here is your host, Paul Childers. Let's get to work.
Welcome, everybody, to another podcast of Roll Up and Roll Out. My name is Paul Childers, and I've got another special guest on here featuring blue-collar business owners that know how to get shit done and take action versus, sitting behind and letting things just kind of come to them. Today, I've got Altaf Kapasi with the American Glass Company as my guest. Altaf, I want you to kind of introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and also about your, just give us an introduction to your business, and then we'll just go from there, man.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you having me on here.
Absolutely.
As you said, my name is Altaf Kapasi. I'm the owner of the American Glass Company. We specialize in shower enclosures, but we do anything glass related: mirrors, tabletops, windows, window panes, and then recently got into doing commercial work too. So we could do storefronts and fix doors and replace pieces of glass in storefronts too. So
Okay. That's awesome.
yeah.
So what got you into this industry? And you can even go back to even some of your most, distant influences from the time you're going through school to, to now, kind of what led you onto this course of life.
Yeah. So I was actually born into it. My family owns it's a very successful glass business called the Kapasi Glass in the upstate. My grandfather started that back in 1975, and they're mainly commercial based. They do some residential, but they don't do shower glass. So I would work for them growing up, learn how to cut glass when I was 15 years old. I would do office work, clean the office and all this other stuff. And then as I grew old, I was at, that purpose that once I go to college, it's like, I'm not coming back. Right. And so I did that. I went to college. I tried 4 or 5 different industries, didn't like it. Tried the corporate world, definitely did not like that. So once I left that, I called my dad and was like, "Hey, they're not the type of people," and my dad and uncle run it. They're not the type of people say, "Oh yeah, we need your help," right? They're very humble people. So I could tell by his voice, like they could definitely use some help. So I went over there, worked for them about 4.5 years. When I was working for them, I realized, hey, I like doing residential more. So that's when I decided to go out on my own.
Okay. That's awesome. I think I think people have this concept that when you have family that is already doing something, that it just naturally gets handed to the kids, right? But in your instance, you were interested in doing something just a little bit differently. And so when you brought that to your dad and even to your grandpa, uncle, all that, your family, was there any friction at all when you said, "Hey, I want to go and do my own thing in the glass world"? Was there any a little bit of conflict there that you weren't going to stay and take over the family business, or how did that all play out for you?
Yeah, I mean, my dad was pretty upset. I don't think he talked to me for about a week. um, but I think he realized that I was in a different path and I had a different vision for the way I wanted to do things, and in order for me to do that, it would have to be on my own. And plus, a lot of people don't realize how different shower glass is more so than storefront. Shower glass, like you got to have it for the 1/8 of an inch, right? Storefronts, if it's not perfectly square, you could just caulk it in and you're good to go.
Yeah.
And so it's a different ball game and different kind of customer base, and it's very interesting.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about that. What is it, the fact that there's so much detail that has to be involved with the actual, I'm assuming you're manufacturing the stuff, right? And forming it, is it the details and kind of the knowledge that you have to that you have to have, or the skill set that kind of attracted you to it, or what was it exactly that attracted you to residential and like shower glass specifically?
Yeah, so, I was working alongside of some people that were fixing up their houses and stuff while I was working for my dad, and I really enjoyed doing residential. I honestly I never really installed a shower glass enclosure until I started doing it on my own. And it was a huge learning curve, right? Because, you got to use special drill bits. You gotta make sure you're drilling into the right, you know, you have the right drill bit for the right tile, making the holes correctly, making sure there's backing in a wall so that way when you hang a door, it won't fall off the wall after a few years, right? So there's a lot of key details that people don't realize because, like, I'm sure most people know this, like, you're not taught anything about glass in school, right? So when you come out, you don't know the first thing about glass. All you know is it breaks,
Yep.
right? So a lot of this stuff is, on learning basis. And my biggest thing was trying to get in front of contractors and letting them know, hey, look, when you do demo work, before you start doing any type of work, you know, come speak to me, right? Because the layout is very important. It could cost a customer hundreds of dollars of extra money if something isn't installed properly or the tile work isn't done this way or there's not the proper studs in there because if the studs aren't there, either we have to tear the tile out or we have to tear the wall out behind it to get the studs in there.
Gotcha.
Right. So it's a lot of detail that a lot of people don't realize, and I love to learn and try new things, and it's been a great experience.
Yeah, it is fascinating. My dad did stained glass windows.
Okay.
So he created a lot of stained glass windows for residential. So like I got to be around that growing up. Now he wasn't a great teacher, and he didn't do it as a full-time business, but he did it as a hobby. And I just remember watching him kind of do his craft and how he would piece things together and how kind of like delicate and actually too, like how strong some glass is when you actually start working with it to a point, like you're making like tiny little pieces and the fact that it doesn't shatter as you're running it through a grinder and stuff, like it's like, okay, like there's definitely like techniques to this stuff, right? Uh, and so that was always fascinating to me. So it's kind of cool to hear you kind of talk about like that, that level of knowledge of like how to handle it, how to prep for it, because I don't think a lot of people understand, from a consumer standpoint, we're just like, oh, we got a new shower and the glass door works. Cool. Awesome. Like, that's great. Right. But what we don't see is all the behind the scenes things that are like, can make or break that project and really make somebody love their shower and their door or hate it. Right. So, um, as you've kind of experimented, like, how long have you been in business now? And what are some things that you've kind of learned in that time period that, have helped you kind of plan for your future growth and expansion?
Yeah, so it'll be 3 years in June.
Okay.
Uh, and, there's a whole list of things that I've learned, man. I could talk about it for days. And you're like, no one could teach you about this until you're in it, right? And that's another reason the part of I left. I feel like when I was at my dad's place, I had maxed out on what I was gonna be able to know with them, right? Everything else as far as HR, accounting stuff, marketing, all that stuff, the next level was gonna have to be on my own. And, there's something about every industry that I've learned, right? But I do know one thing, a lot of people talk and, make you feel all lovey-dovey to make you think you got the sell, right? But one thing that is not guaranteed is you actually have the job until you sign that contract,
Mhm.
right? That is number one. And customer satisfaction is great, but and it's basically everything, right? Off Google, if they don't get a 5-star review, it's gonna affect you one way or another. It's the way people talk about you, your name, your reputation could literally be blown by just messing up one job,
Yep.
right? So just take care of your customers, take care of your people, and everything else will just naturally grow.
Mhm. Yeah, to your point, I spent a lot of time in automotive. That's kind of where I cut my teeth. And, we always had a saying, and one of the things I found doing it was it's not even so much the bad reviews that people leave. Most people are actually looking to see how you respond to those bad reviews to make a judgment off of you as a company. So I've got some people out there that are like, oh, we just ignore the bad reviews and just bury them under good ones. And I'm like, well, you shouldn't actually ignore those. You should respond to them properly, professionally, and directly. And because what people do is they usually filter by bad reviews and then just read responses and see what actually happened there. And then they like to see the owner response. So like there's a lot of opportunity there, understanding that customer satisfaction isn't just oh, we got a review, but we've got all of these 5-star reviews on top of it. It's how you respond to each and every review and how like almost kind of like, unique and customized that response is to each person because you had those customers, like you knew what that relationship was like, good or bad, and you get to have control over how people perceive that at the end of it, right? So that part of it is super important, I think, even from like a B2B standpoint, understanding your customer base, understanding their needs, and then, going above and beyond to take care of it. Like, give me an example of like a situation that maybe started off bad for you guys, but you were able to resolve it and now have a customer for life. I'm assuming you've probably got a few of those situations because it happens in every business.
Oh yeah. So it was actually with a contractor. I mean, it wasn't necessarily his fault. It was the customer that changed their mind, and they had requested a frameless enclosure, and it was a neo angle. Basically, a neo angle is like a piece of glass, and then you have two pieces of glass on each side at like a 135-degree angle or some type of angle like that. And I had told them from the get go, hey, looks like this frameless unit is probably not your best waterproofing. The shower's small, the shower head is hitting right on the door. And when you have a frameless, you have more open gaps, right? You have it where the door is, the hinge side, and the top and bottom. Obviously, the water not coming from the top is more so going to be coming from the sides of the bottom. Well, they used it and a few times, and it was leaking. I mean, we tried all types of different sweeps and replaced the glass to make it smaller, to use different type of plastic to try to waterproof, and it couldn't work. Wouldn't work. And like the contractor, just was upset about it, and because obviously it wasn't, the customer was just not happy with it. So ended up saying I wanted to save grace with the contractor and the customer, and I just gave him a new enclosure for free at no cost. And I put it under, my fault. I should have never presented that option of having a frameless in the first place. So that was a learning point for me as well. But I took care of the whole situation, and it saved mine and the contractor's relationship, and we do a lot of work together.
Yeah. That's important, right? Like understanding that maybe it's not entirely your fault, but at the same time, it's the person that just kind of steps forward and assumes responsibility and presents. I think more important than assuming responsibility is presenting a solution that satisfies the customer and the contractor. Often gets overlooked because we tend to get really defensive when stuff happens, and sometimes you just got to just react and just do the right thing, right? Like our motto and my motto, even now in my own business, but when we were in automotive, was like, just take care of the customer. Don't make it painful, right? Like just use your common sense. Don't fight. Don't argue. So many times, like business owners, I see them just arguing with like the contractors and the customers. I'm like, it's not worth it. Just resolve the issue, write it off as a learned experience, and then just move forward, right? And I think that happens a lot. So, what are some things like what is like the thing that you love most about what you do, and like off of that, like what are you most excited about for the future of your company?
So obviously glass. I'm passionate about glass. I love glass, and when somebody's doing a bathroom remodel, like the first thing people see is the glass work, right? So that's the last thing that goes in, but the first thing people see and catches their eye. So I mean, that's one thing I love about it. I grew up in the glass industry. I joke with my friends all the time, like we Kapasi's, we cut ourselves out of the womb with a glass cutter, right? Because it's just been in our blood and for decades now. So it's enjoyable. I love it. And I'm excited for the growth. We just recently got into commercial work, so I'm looking to connect with different hotel owners, and try to do their shower glass for Hiltons and Marriotts and those kind of changes like that. I think that's going to be great for our company. So
That's cool. Like, so like when you get into like hotel work, what are some things that you as a business owner need to have in place in order to be able to scale it? And then, not only that, but like, we always say like scale it, nail it, and then repeat it. Like, what are some things that you're kind of like already starting to do in your business to help you set that up so that when you get there and you start making those contacts, you're ready to just run?
So a couple of things is obviously having the right staff, right? That's the most important. Well, one of the important things. I think the most important thing is having the proper SOPs, staying operating procedures, right? When you go into hotels, basically going to be the same stuff in every single hotel, right? They want us to do the glass in the showers. They want us to do finished hardware. So having the right people on your crew and having the proper SOP so that, hey, look, this is how you install this stuff. Take this paperwork with you. Every single bathroom is going to be the exact same, right? So if they have a list of things to follow, here's 1, 2, 3, and 4, they shouldn't make a mistake, right? And then obviously having the people trained up to be able to do that. I'm gonna have to have people that just does glass for all the rooms, and then somebody that just goes behind them and does all the hardware. So it's gonna be interesting and fun, and like I said, another learning experience because having having the right staff with that type of work, it's different, you know.
Right. Well, and I also assume it's not just all in one area, right? Like you could potentially get into a chain and you could be all over the US. So like that's a whole nother logistical like hurdle to get around because you got to not only find the right crew, but you also got to find guys that are okay being on the road, 36, 38 weeks out of the year as well,
Not that
potentially, right?
far.
And that's also a lot of trust that you put in them as a business owner that they have the right mentality and are taking care of everything the right way.
Oh yeah.
So that's cool. No, that's cool. Like, I think people like we see these things when we go into people's houses and we see these things when we go into hotels. Like I've been to some like, some pretty decent upscale hotels and stuff. And you walk in and you're like, oh, that's cool. Like the shower looks really neat. But what we don't always think about is like all the planning and design work and testing that went into building those things. So it's kind of cool hearing it from your side. Is everything you guys do like tell me a little bit about the back end process. Are like who do you like order the glass from, or are you guys like processing that stuff yourself? Are you getting like big sheets of glass? Like what does that look like? Like, from like start to finish, like kind of what is that process? I'm kind of curious to hear what you guys like do on the back end to prep for this
Yeah.
stuff.
So a lot of people don't realize that the prep and even like even full bathroom remodel, the back end work takes longer than actual when you start the work, right? You go there, you take measurements, then you map it out and make sure all the measurements and everything is good. You make sure you have the hardware that in the right places, the hinges, the clamps, or the U channel, whatever the customer needs. And then you go there and produce it. We don't produce anything in house. There's not a glass company in our area or region that actually produces glass in house. We all have suppliers around here. We all use the same people. It's just a matter of which kind of customer service you want, right? There's about 4 or 5 different suppliers there that just sells to installers or whatever. But yeah, it's a different ballgame producing the glass. Because once you polish and temper a glass, that's it. You can't fix it. So if a glass is 1/8 of an inch wrong, measured wrong, then it can literally ruin the whole shower, right? So it you can't really install anything until you have all the pieces typically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very tedious and you gotta very detailed.
So measure 4 times and cut or shave once really is a rule of thumb with that.
Uh, and, like, machines are people don't realize it, but machines aren't perfect either. Like it things are made incorrectly. I guess more so it's typed in, right? The measurements. So it could be typed in wrong and the glass could be cut wrong too. So it's not always the person who orders it's fault, but a lot of different, things that can go wrong in the process.
So do you guys have like the machines yourself, like at where you're at that like cut and do some of this stuff? Or is this like stuff that you're ordering from like the manufacturers to make sure that it gets to you? Or is there kind of like a combination of the two?
Yeah, I currently order about 90-95% of my stuff. Um, it's just quicker. I don't have my warehouse set up to that yet.
Yep.
Hopefully by the end of this year I will. But it's usually just easier just to order it, they deliver it, and I just go in and install it. So
Gotcha. If there was one thing that you could change about your industry, whether that's like working with suppliers or contractors or what, like what is it and why would you change that?
pricing, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of people that think they can do this. A lot of people that used to work for somebody that quit and started their own thing, and they're just cutting prices left and right. And it's just ruined the industry. You have to have, and those people probably don't have the right insurance, the right things that need to be an actually installer. So they cut prices because they just have to worry about their vehicle, right? And they're not thinking long term. They're not thinking about growth. They're not thinking about the future. And there's a lot of things that I wish I'm trying to get in front of some of these glass companies to talk to them and face to face and be like, hey, listen, you've been doing this for this long, and I've been doing this for this long. Like we could work together. We're not here to. There's plenty of food to be eat, right? There's no point in us cutting our own throats and just making each other the industry suffer in general, right? There's absolutely no need for that. So I think it's a lot of people in different industries, right? Not just glasswork, but I think, the tile keeper has experiencing the same thing. And
It's it's any I think it's any industry, right? Like I came from my background was in automotive initially, and like that's an industry that really up until COVID and even in COVID, like they hung themselves, I think, with the way they handled things. But it was always, at least where I'm located up here in the Midwest, it was always like a race to the bottom. And I'm like, why are we racing to the bottom when we can still maintain margins, still give customers a good price, and but also all be able to elevate our level of service that we provide because we can pay our staff more, right? Because like at some point in time, something's gotta give one way or another, right? Like because workers seem to be harder to come by if you can't provide exceptional levels of X or Y for them in your company. Is that something that you're experiencing? And what are some things that you've done as a business owner to kind of offset that like shift in like worker mentality?
yeah, so I got obviously, the pay is huge, right? And that's what most people think about. So like I do a lot of like giving back, a lot of community service, and like I try to follow our core values. So I do things a lot of glass companies don't. I go out and help younger generation, try to, help them, guide them in the right direction. I do a lot of community service. There's a lot of things that I do differently that people do. Obviously pay is huge, right? So I try to take care of people with pay, but it's not always about pay. I think people think that, but it's more about, people want consistency. People want to know that you're going to be there to 5 or 10 years. You always have their back. You're always going to help
Yep.
them, think about them when, other people aren't.
Yep.
So just ensuring them that they have a good, safe workplace and that anything they need will be taken care of in that aspect. I think that goes a long way as well.
Right. And I think also on top of that, some of the things I've experienced, from a hiring standpoint is, yeah, it's pay is part of it, obviously. Benefits are part of it, but overall, people don't want to be shoved into if we've got a pegboard, they don't want to be shoved into a square hole of the round peg, right? Like they want to be heard by their employer, and the employers that really understand their workers and spend time to understand, like, hey, what is your strength and weakness? What do you enjoy doing? And what don't you enjoy doing? What are you good at and don't like doing, but also like, what are you good at and love doing? What are you bad at, but would love to learn? And how can we help you get in these quadrants where you're spending time doing things that you love and are good at, and things that you maybe aren't super familiar with, but you want to get better at? Because people need to be challenged. They need to be able to grow. And so many times we as business owners, I think, just shove them into one spot and then just leave them there. And then they feel neglected. And what we really should be doing is spending a lot more time, like actually getting to, like, as dumb as this sounds, actually get to know the people that work under you and what makes them tick, because everybody is so unique and different. Some people don't want to get promoted, but they want to get challenged in different ways in their current position. Some people want to get promoted, but we so often are just like, here's how this whole department's going to get built out, and everybody has to follow the same procedures. Like,
Yeah.
what are some things that you do before we, wind it up here? Like, what are some things that you've done with your employees where you found has been very gratifying for them and they've responded positively with?
Yeah. So one thing I do is like, when actually back to what you were saying, which is all good valid points. And some people don't realize like that what they're doing probably isn't what's they're best at, right? So like for example, I have all my employees take a personality test. 100%. I tell them, look, this is mainly for both of us, but it helps me being able to know what your weak points and what you're good at and how you learn and train, right? So like it shows them how they are, right? So like for example, on the point and say they'll tell them, hey, look, they don't take information lightly, right? They get offended too easily. Right. So they know that, hey, look, if I'm trying to say something, it's not to offend them or insult them, it's to help because I'm there to help them.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that taking a personality test has actually been very beneficial for me because it helps us, be able to work together better, and it helps me understand them a little bit better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So
I 100% agree with that. That makes a difference. So, one last thing before we go, where is your service area? And anybody that's listening that might be interested in, what you do, the services you provide, and like the area that you cover, what's the best way for them to get a hold of and reach out to you to learn more about you and your company?
yeah. So we service all of South Carolina. Also in North Carolina, we're service Charlotte, the surrounding areas, and same thing as Asheville. And then we do Atlanta and Georgia and surrounding areas as well right now. If anybody wants to reach out to me, they could either visit my website at www.theamericanglasscompany.com. We're on Instagram, and we're also on Facebook, or they could give us a call at 864-721-3082.
All right, cool. Altaf, I appreciate your time today. This was a great learning experience for me. And again, I love having the time with business owners like yourself, because I think there's so much like misconception out there of like what it actually takes to run a business, and every business is unique. So thank you for your time.
Appreciate you having me.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening. This is another episode of Roll Up, Roll Out. I look forward to having everybody back for our next episode. Until then, take care and take it easy.